15, and we got as far as verse 6-ish. And this is against the background. He's going to continue what they started in the first few verses for a little bit longer, and then we're going to follow that in argument through and just pick up bits and pieces as we go and highlight some things. So it says, of the apostles, Jesus had chosen Peter to preach the first time to the Jews that met this group in the kingdom, which is his family, the church. Jesus had also chosen Peter to preach the first gospel sermon to the Gentiles to admit this group into the kingdom or church. This is what Jesus had meant when he told Peter that he was given the keys of the kingdom of heaven, Matthew 16, that should be 16 AD. The gospel, that's not one, well, it could be 1 to 16, but it's 16 AD. The gospel is open to the hearts of both Jew and Gentile. So the first gospel sermon was preached in Acts chapter 2 to a whole group of Jews, and then as Peter continued his journey, he began to, especially with Cornelius, he began to open up the church to the Gentile, or the Gentile allowed the church, Gentiles into the church. And we, as I said last week, we have the same privilege because we have the same opportunity to preach the same gospel, to do exactly the same thing to people nowadays. So we're still opening doors for people into the family of God, and that's an important task.
All the way along, I always got impression about Peter standing at the pearly gates of
There's a number of passages that are misunderstood like that. Sometimes you'll get a gospel tract by certain individuals, quite a regular occurrence, and on the back it's got this, Jesus is standing at the door and knocking, all you've got to do is let him in. And that's another passage that's often misused, because the door that Jesus is standing in front of is actually a church that has lost its love. And he says, you've locked me out. So he's actually, that passage is referring to Christians. And Jesus has been locked out of the Christians' lives, and he's standing at the door and saying, let me back in. Unless you let me back in, you're going to be in bad trouble. And yet we often see, it's interesting how often passages get misapplied in different areas. But it's interesting how sometimes we conjure up in our mind's eye an idea that we maybe hold on to for a long time of what a passage may imply. But it's good, that's why Bible study is good, because as we go through books like these, we touch on lots of different things, and hopefully they'll answer some of the questions you have, or maybe give us more questions depending on the area we're in.
There's a couple of films that give that impression as well, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. There's a channel on the God channels. I don't know if it's on just now, but it used to be by the brethren in America, and they actually.
On channel is still.
Yeah.
Is that what you watch all the time?
No, not all the time. No. But I just every day or so I'll flick through and see what the name is.
Sometimes.
As a matter of fact, at the moment now, if you are do watch the God channels, there's a guy on there at the moment. I think he's a Baptist background, but it's only certain things that come through what he says. But he's very good. He obviously is super familiar with the Hebrew, and he's an older man. I don't know. I get the impression probably, Frank's age, or maybe slightly younger, 70s. But his hands are absolutely mangled with some sort of disease. And so when he lifts anything or points with anything, it's really, but the hands really don't detract what he said, because he's very, very good. And some of the things he brings out, and really in the life of Jesus, and the background stories to the life of Jesus, it's very, very interesting to listen to. He's not always correct, but he's interesting to listen to. A good man. So you get the occasional. There's only about, out of all the God channels, there's only about, and I've been watching them off and on for now for about probably 2-3 years. There's maybe maximum 5 people on the God channels that really know their stuff, and you think, yes. And even them, I wouldn't agree 100% with everything they say, but they're certainly listenable to and helpful. The rest of them are just basically out for money, and some of the stuff they do is absolutely horrendous. But and a lot of people tune in for that. It's a shame, really. But amongst, like everything else, amongst the dross, there's some gems. A bit like my teaching. Anyway, so Matthew 16, 18. Okay, because I remember I said last week that Jesus, later on to the 12, actually repeated much the same statement as he made to Peter. Because he then goes on to talk about I've got a second one, binding and loosing. I've lost the bound bit. Binding and loosing. So the things he was going to bind on certain people, and the things he was going to loose from certain people. When you think about the Jews, he said to the Jews, I'm going to bind some new doctrine on you. And you're going to be saved by grace and faith through Christ, which is totally different from what they're used to. But he's also going to loose from them the law with all its statutes and the sacrificial system. So you can bind certain things, you're going to loose certain things. And in chapter 18, verse 18, about 16 again, he says the same thing to all of the apostles. He says, all of you are going to have this power to bind and to loose. And that's why, by implication, if you like, down through time to us, when we open up the scriptures to people, we also bind on them certain things and we loose them from certain things. So the gospel keys are ongoing through every generation.
The gospel binds sins and looses sins.
Binds sins and looses sins. It also brings freedom to some and it brings condemnation to others. You know, it's got all sorts of implications in there. A key can be used to open up and it can be used to lock. So, anyway, Peter has been important so far. I'm going to see him come on to do more significance again.
But old-fashioned handcuffs.
This Bernard might have been one of these as a kid. He lived out in the country. Okay? May your yoke. I remember for years when I was a kid having to go to the well and carry buckets of water when a thing.
Oh, you never.
What? Before I went to school, I had 2,000 hens to muck out and feed, and when I come back from school, I had a whole bunch more. Anyway, I could tell you about yolks. But it is a bit fun. Especially in the winter time, I'm to break the ice. Anyway, not enough of that rubbish. So yoke. Jesus said, my yoke will be easy, because to make a yoke, being a craftsman, make a yoke, you can make a bad yoke and you can make a good one. You can make one that fits snugly and is easy to carry, and you can have just a lump of wood with rough edges on, it'll rip the back of the shoulders off you. So Jesus would have made a nice easy yoke, and that's the implication of that. The law was a heavy yoke that the Gentiles did not have to bear. Okay? So this argument earlier on, it's going to be clarified, because if you're a bit confused what happened in the first few verses later on. We're talking about the yoke. The Gentiles have come into the family of God, and they want to bind on the Gentiles the law, the legal system, the sacrificial, maybe the sacrificial system, a lot of the stuff that came over from the Old Testament. And they wanted to rebind on the Gentiles circumcision before they become Christians, and all that type of stuff. So the yoke burden they were going to put upon them was wrong, and it's highlighted. So verse 9 says, he made no distinction between us and them, for he purified their hearts by faith. Now then, why do you try to test God by putting on the necks of the disciples a yoke that neither we nor our fathers have been able to bear? Paul, in his writing in Romans, highlights the fact, he says, if you want to live by the law, okay, you're setting yourself a difficult task. Because if you break the law at one point, you're a lawbreaker. You know, if you could use the illustration, you know, if somebody steals something, how many things does a person have to steal before he can be called a thief? You know, as soon as you've stolen your first thing, people can legitimately say, stop, thief. And he says the same thing about the law. If you want to be a law keeper, if you want to be acceptable to God by saying, I keep all the law, he says, you only need to slip up on one point, and you can no longer say that, I keep all the law. So if you want to live that way, that's not what Christ has done for you. Christ's broken that barrier. His blood has made us acceptable to God. Not a legalistic system of have a checklist. Have I done everything that the law requires of me today? Okay?
We're all doomed then. We're all doomed then.
Yes, if we want to be back under a law.
I go over 30.
If we want to be judged by the law, we are, but we're not judged by the law.
Thankfully to God, we're not judged by that. Because we're free from the law in the blood by the blood of Christ. We stand before God, and He sees you and I, and this is absolutely crazy, really. He sees you and I as perfect.
But we were never under that law anyway.
No, this is true. But they were trying to bind that law back under us. But even if in a different kind of law system, if we want to be any kind of law system today, apart from the law of the Spirit in Christ, then if we want to be saved by, is my balance right? You know, if I've got enough weight in this side, good stuff done to outbalance the bad stuff, then I'll be okay. If we want to live by that system, we're going to fail. Somebody once said, if you expect a pat on the back for being good and being really clever and the best you can be, why? Because if that's how God has made you, what credit do you take from that? You know, if you've got a natural ability as a footballer, okay, you can expand that ability and improve in it, but the natural ability is a God-given ability from your genetic past, if you like, God-given ultimately. So for us to get praised or thanked for doing what is right, he says that's wrong, because when we do the best we can, that's all that's expected of us, to be the best we can. We in our day and age, we water that down by, well, you know, I'm not as bad as they are, I'm not as bad as Hitler, I'm not as bad as, and because we can look around and say, well, I'm not as bad as, that makes us feel good. And sadly, that's sometimes how we live our lives. Sometimes we look for people that are, if you like, defective, look for people who are making a mess of their lives, who say, look at that, at least I'm not as bad as they are, I must be acceptable to God because I'm far better than they are. And that's exactly what the Pharisee said in his prayer, didn't he? Look at how, thank God, as this man is a sinner. He thought he was perfect before God. And that's just a mess. Because if we judge ourselves by each other, we'll look for people around us who feel better, or maybe think we're better than. But in the eyes of God, that's not true. Christ died for all of our sins. We are all sinners before God. But it's only in the blood of Christ He sees us in reality right now as pure and blameless. And that's incredible. Not because of what we've done, but because of what Christ has done for us. He sees us through the eyes of Christ.
And because we've trusted Him.
And because yes, our blood has cleansed us from our sins. And because we're in that relationship with God, He sees us as perfect. It's a bit like, you know, when you're a parent, if you've got a young child, maybe 8 or 9, and they've done something horrific, and somebody comes knocking the door and says, your little Johnny did such and such, but you as a parent, oh no he didn't, my little Johnny wouldn't do that. And you have to be convinced that little Johnny did what he did, because he's your kid, and you think always the best. Well, you should always think the best of your child. You need to be convinced that he did those things wrong. But hopefully, if you are convinced, then you'll think might give a good lesson. Anyway, but in Christ we're acceptable to God, not because of who we are, but because of what Christ is, and what He's done for us, and by our acceptance of what He's done for us, we are acceptable to God. So that's why He says our fathers couldn't bear this yoke. You want to bring back circumcision and all the law and the legal system and be acceptable to God through some sort of legal system. He says our fathers couldn't do it. They failed right, left, and centre. And you want to bind that on the Gentiles? No, he says. Well, say why?
They'd never have done it, would they? They'd never have become Christians.
No, definitely not.
They wouldn't have wanted that.
It wouldn't be good news to them. Here, get back to join the Jews, get back to the sacrificial system, get back to some sort of legalistic thing. But having said that, it was interesting because in the Old Testament, it's the same God of grace in the Old Testament. Habakkuk talks about them being saved by faith. But they lost sight of all that and made it into some sort of, Sabbath day's journey. Okay, take my shoe off now. They were breaking the law right, left, and centre. They made up their own laws and then broke those just as easily. And made harder things for life for people to bear than it needs to be. He says, no, we believe it is through the grace of our Lord Jesus that we are rescued just as they are. So the Jews are just rescued through Jesus. They were waiting for the Messiah. They should have been waiting for the Messiah. The Messiah was able to fulfill everything that they needed to do. No longer a sacrificial system, because Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice. And it would be acceptable through Jesus, to God through Jesus. And it's by grace. God could so easily have done what he did so long ago. He could have wiped us all out. I've had enough. These fractious human beings, these waste of space for the average person. He could have just said, I've had enough, just wipe it all out and let's go home. But he didn't. He sent his son to die for us. And because of that, he rescued us. That's interesting what salvation is actually saving, rescuing from perishing. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever should not perish. Salvation. Such a way of being saved from true danger. Peter becomes the second hero in this story. Beautiful picture of a mature Christian spirituality. Now it's interesting, we talked last week about Peter having a few defects and putting his foot in the wrong place, saying the wrong thing and doing the wrong thing at different times. But at the same time, God used him for great stuff. You know, without Peter standing up and the end of the first day of Pentecost, 3,000 wouldn't have obeyed the gospel. Without Peter making that tremendous mental leap from a Jewish perspective to actually go into a Gentile's home for Cornelius. You know, that's a tremendous test of character for him. And yet the fragility of it when he messes things up, as we talked about last week. But in this case, showing a bit of, here's a real situation, could have really damaged the church, brought it to its knees, or even destroyed it before he even got a chance to really start. And he stands up and he reflects, look, we're not going to be saved by law, we're going to be saved by grace. No distinction. Once God made a distinction between the Jews and the Gentiles, he did between the clean and unclean animals, he does so no more. Every Jew who is saved in exactly the same way and on the same basis that every Gentile is saved. God has no further plans for a fleshly Israel. The church has replaced the nation of Israel as God's chosen and holy nation. We are the new people of God, the church of the living God. Again, you get lots of people saying, oh no, there's going to be a time when the Jews are going to be special again in the eyes of God. That's not true. The same gospel that saves us is the same gospel we need to go out and preach to the Jews, to give them the opportunity to be saved in the same way as us. That's what Paul says in Romans chapter 11. That's what it implies. He says, you Gentiles may come to a point where you look down on the Jews. You know, you Jews, you're finished. You're past history. He says, instead of just looking at them like that, he says, we need to thank God that God, through the Jews, brought about salvation. We need to be thankful to the Jewish nation that did so much in their disobedience, and yet through them came the Messiah. And because of the Messiah that came through him, we have salvation. Therefore, our obligation is to help the Jews open their eyes to see the Christ and be obedient to the Christ. Okay. We want to discuss that? We'll come back to it. Okay. The law. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then and do not let ourselves be burdened again by the yoke of slavery. Mark my words, Paul tell you, Paul tell you that if you let yourself be circumcised, Christ will be of no value to you at all. Okay? You go back under a legal system, you've lost sight of the blood of Christ. What was the point of Christ dying? But he did die. His blood was shed. Therefore, let's move on. This is love. This is love for God. He obeys his commands, and his commands are not burdensome, it says. Remember the heavy yoke? Jesus made a yoke that is light for us to carry, or ought to be light for us to carry, because within it we have salvation, we have redemption, we have forgiveness, we have a heavenly hope. You know, sometimes we only think of the bad things about Christianity, the fact that we've got to live with other Christians. You know, but there's a lot of good stuff in there, and we need to be thankful for our past and our future, and the ability to learn to forgive each other and to be able to have compassion for another. Are we saved through grace? Of course we're saved through grace. Now, there's a lot of confusion about grace. We talked about it way back, if you can remember that far back in Acts chapter 2. But grace is that which God has done for us, which we couldn't do ourselves. God has supplied the sacrifice or the means. It's a bit like if you came to a torrential flow of water and you needed to get to the other side and you were absolutely stuck. There was no way to get across. And suddenly, this boat comes down from the other side of the bank and comes across, and you step in the boat, and you get across the river. Now you could turn around and say, look at that, I made it. Or I did it my own steam, didn't I? If the boat hadn't been supplied, we'd still be on the other bank. God supplied the boat. Without His supplying Christ and the blood of Christ, there's no way we could have had forgiveness of our sins.
And if you didn't get into the boat, you'd still be on the other bank.
And if you didn't get in the boat, that's right.
Into the boat when it's there.
You had to take the opportunity while it's there. Okay, good point. So the overall, that's the grace of God. He stepped into humanity, stepped into our world. He allowed His Son to pay the price for our sins, and all He challenges us to do is accept that this has been offered on our behalf and be obedient to it. Okay. Because by grace you've been saved through faith, and this not from yourselves. It's a gift of God, not by works, that no one can boast. Okay? Nobody can earn his own salvation. There's no way you can work hard enough to get to heaven. Okay? God has allowed His Son to die, and it's His blood that is acceptable. Just as in the Old Testament, remember that time when they were in Egypt and were ready to leave Egypt, they had to take the blood and they had to put it over the doorposts. And if you put it over the doorpost, the firstborn wasn't killed. And if you didn't have the blood in the doorpost, your firstborn was killed. And then the blood made the difference between the saving of your firstborn or your death of your firstborn. And the blood makes a difference for us. It is how we are acceptable to God today. Okay. You see then that how by works a man is justified not by faith alone, James says. Because you're not working in order to be saved. You're working because you're thankful you are saved. And that's a real difficult thing for some people to grasp. You work not because you have to. You work because you want to. You work not because it's going to get you salvation, but because you appreciate the salvation that He's given you. And that's a huge difference to be able to grasp. Okay? So you also, when you have done everything you were told to do, should we say, we are unworthy servants who have only done our duty. This is a kind of reference I was talking to earlier. You know, when we've done the best that we can do, because we have that ability to do it, then, you know, sometimes we like to be thanked for that. But really, we have all these talents and abilities, not based upon ourselves, but our genetic background, which ultimately came from God in the first place. Therefore, God expects us to be nice to people, to do good things, and all this type of stuff. And when we fail to do it, we're just failing to use the natural talents and abilities that God has given us. You could think there, if you like, about parables. You know, if God's only given you one talent, then He's only going to expect one talent from you. And I love that passage where Jesus says in Matthew 25, He says, if you give a cup of cold water to somebody who's in need, you imagine somebody struggling through the desert. They're in the desert for 14 days, no water. And you come along and you've got a huge ruby. And you say, here you are, I've got a ruby for you. Here you are, how do you think of that? Push off, you're not going to need water. Oh, I've got a ruby, diamonds, rubies. When you actually die in a fast, you're not interested in rubies and gold. But somebody comes along and says, I've got a cup of water. Saviour, magic. You can keep your rubies, give me the water. Because that's life-giving. Okay? And sometimes for some people, Christians ought to be able, and this is a challenge for us, you ought to be able to give that cup of cold water, in other words, to meet people's needs, spiritual needs, to help them be refreshed. Jesus is referred to as the river of life. And we've got to introduce people, help people to see the beauty of Jesus that flows from the throne of God. Verse 12 says, the whole assembly became silent as they listened to Barnabas and Paul telling about the miraculous signs and wonders God had done among the Gentiles through them. He says, God has really blessed the work that we've done. We've reached loads of people with the gospel of Christ. We've had our ups, we've had our downs, but God has been with us through the whole thing. And all these people who were arguing about, oh, Gentiles should be circumcised, oh no, we should be more Jewish, and they were silenced when they began to listen and hear what God had done through these men. And they were so impressed, they decided to understand what was going on. So this was enough to close the mouths of the gainsayers. How could they argue that Peter, Paul, Barnabas had said was not true and not a clear demonstration of the will of God? Okay, James the Just. When they finished, James spoke up. Brothers, listen to me. Simon has described to us how God at first showed his concern by taking from the Gentiles a people for himself. The words of the prophets are in agreement with this, as it was written. After this I will return and build David's fallen tent. Its ruins I will rebuild, I will restore it, that the remnant of men shall seek the Lord, and all the Gentiles shall bear my name. Say to the Lord, who does these things that have been known for ages? The tent of David was the Jewish nation over whom David ruled. He was a symbol of the Christ who would come and rebuild David's fallen tent and restore its ruins. Jesus did this when he came and built the church. Sometimes you hear some people talk about some of the things that in the Old Testament refer to the Jewish nation, that David, some people will say, well, Jesus could have come and sit again on David's throne, physical throne in Jerusalem. No. Peter, in Acts chapter 2, actually said, Jesus is now seated at the right hand of God. He has now taken up his place. David had his throne by the authority of God. Jesus is now seated upon his throne by the authority of God. So Jesus now is seated upon David's throne. In Acts chapter 2, that's called Peter's argument. So the tent of David, the Jewish nation, the tent was going to be restored, and he did that, a symbol of the Christ who would come, rebuild David's fallen tent, restore its ruins. The Jewish nation can find fulfillment in Christ. If I can all see it. James, traditionally called James the Just, was a half-brother of Jesus. He seems to be the president of this assembly. James was not an apostle, but evidently a prophet and leader in the Jerusalem church. He was the author of the Bible book that bears his name. He brought the meeting to its conclusion by proposing a solution to which they all agreed. And we'll look at that next. Okay? Any questions?
Yeah. Why was he half-brother?
Well, Jesus was God and Mary.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay?
But as you were saying,
they were
yeah.
Joseph and Mary, but
Yeah.
Jesus was God and Mary.
Yeah.
Okay? Matthew 13:55 talks about the brothers of Jesus.
There is also the theory that Joseph was much older than Mary,
Yeah.
and
She
may have
died.
been previously married.
She was only meant to be sort of like a teenager, wasn't she?
She was quite young, and he seemed to have been older, and he died. He seemed to have died before Jesus was crucified. That is one of the theories, anyway.
Yep, there's lots of different theories on that, but that's yes, true. So Jesus had other brothers and sisters, and this is one of them, James. When you think about what a contrast, because last time we remember his brothers and sisters back in the Gospels, he's mad. He's a nutcase. Okay? And now here he is playing a prominent position in the early church. Okay? This is my judgment, therefore. We should not make it difficult for the Gentiles who are turning to God. Instead, we should write to them, tell them to abstain from food polluted to idols, sexual immorality, meat strangled from animals, and from blood. Okay? These are the four things out of all the law, out of all the things related to the law. These were going to be four things that were consistently related to the Gentiles of their day, and there's also, I'll add a little bit more onto that. So, food polluted from idols, sexual immorality, and meat strangled animals, and from blood. Okay, these things. Now, you've got to remember the background that they're involved in. All of this was commonplace in the pagan worship, in the markets. So this would have been a normal way of life for many Gentiles. But it would be an abnormal way of life for Jews. And the Gentiles and Jews coming together as one in Christ Jesus, the Jewish side wanted to bind circumcision, a whole bunch of other things. The meeting has decided, no, we're not going to go down that route, but there are certain things that obviously will cause problems within the congregations. So let's highlight just those and stick to those alone as being bound upon, if you want to call it that, the Gentile Christians. And we'll go a little bit more. It says, Moses had been preached in every city from the earliest times, is read in the synagogues every Sabbath, verse 21. no suggestion of salvation statements. As soon as they hear those who are involved in these things from the pagan background up to now. For example, if you had been eating food polluted by idols, that wouldn't be seen as something that you'd lose your soul over, but it's something that would cause problems within the church. So therefore they're advised not to do that. Sexual immorality, that's another one where they would have maybe come up, some of the Corinthian Christians would be so used to the temple prostitutes coming down at night as a pagan way of life, and they would worship in that way by having sex with the temple prostitutes. Now he's saying you can't keep on going doing that, because now there is a different morality at stake, and therefore you can't continue that way of life. The meat strangled for animals, the meat was offered to the idols, and then what was left over was taken down and sold in the marketplace. It would be quite natural for many of the Gentiles to eat that meat without any problem.
I think the question there was that the blood was not allowed to drain out. And from the very beginning, God had said in Genesis 9, everything that lives shall be meat for you, but the flesh with the blood thereof you shall not eat. So the Jews were in the habit of killing the animal and allowing the blood to drain out. And the pagans would gather the blood and drink it, believing that the soul of the animal would pass into them. But from the very beginning, blood has always been regarded as sacred by God. Always as sacred.
Not as sacred as
even the blood of animals is regarded as sacred.
Jehovah's Witnesses often tell that we won't have blood transfusion because life is in the blood. That's a misconstruction of the passage to deal with, because it's a different ballgame altogether.
Yeah, but again, they object to a blood transfusion. Jesus said, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friend." If, as they say, the blood represents the life, and consequently you must not take it, ingest it. If I love a brother so much that I'm willing to give him my blood, and the blood is the life, then there's nothing greater than that.
That's it.
No objection to a blood transfusion.
Shouldn't have. Interesting. Okay. I believe these 4 rules were emphasized to Gentiles because these things were common practice among the pagan Gentiles, and they didn't think there was anything wrong with them. So there was some restrictions on their old way of life that they needed to give up in order to live in harmony with the Jewish Christians, and for this reason they're told to keep these rules. Most cities in the Roman world had Jewish synagogues. If the Gentile Christians did any of these things, it would so offend the Jews that they might never come to Jesus and be saved, so they could easily forgo these things. Now, for the sake, this is not only for the sake of the Jewish Christians within the church come from a Jewish background, but also for the impact of outreach to Jews. Because obviously the Jews would be horrified and may not want to have anything to do with any Gentile who did what they would see as these wrong practices. So if you, I don't know about you, but when you talk to people about your faith, as soon as they know you're a Christian, quite often what they start doing is they look at your life and look at certain things that you do, and they look for an excuse to try and bring you down. Okay? So in that kind of background, this is what this is all about. It says, don't give them an excuse for rejecting the Christ because they say, "Oh, look at him, he eats blood," or whatever. Okay, so he's trying to eliminate some of the access to the gospel, if you like. That could have been a stumbling block for some of these people. Temple prostitutes in the pagan temple. They would how would happen, because ladies, children, boys and girls, boys were always seen as more important than girls. So what would happen if you had a girl baby you didn't want to have? You'd put her out in the street, and the temple prostitutes would come down and they would pick up all these baby girls, and then later on, from that same household, the father, being engaged in worship under this type of worship they had in Corinth, would have sex with the temple prostitutes. But because these little kids had been grown up within the temple confines and brought up to be temple prostitutes, it could quite feasibly happen that a child that you put out in the street years ago could be the same young lady you end up having sex with. Later on. Anyway, so, physical intimate decree. It would cover any kind of sexual activity outside of marriage. Alright. Jewish people eating. They do eat, you know. They're normal. Okay. Same reason true today. We should not eat any animal that has died by strangulation, eat or drink blood of anything we know has been sacrificed for an idol. The only reason to forego these three things is because of the effect they may have on Jewish people, many of whom are still sensitive to the dietary teaching of the law of Moses. These things are much more offensive to Jews than eating shellfish or a bit of pork.
Now we've got black puddings then, does it?
Well,
I was thinking about that one.
Oh, you mind this?
there's a lot of, some would definitely say that black pudding's one of the restrictions they have, you know.
What about
And,
liver then?
what
What about liver?
liver.
Liver.
Usually, well, if you put a bit of liver in the plate, usually you see the blood begin to drain out of it. But it is technically a blood
Liver's
source.
not sort of
There's no food value in the blood anyway like that.
No. But no, he said if you eat liver,
Yeah.
he was saying
Liver's
the same,
got blood in it.
a little bit the same as black pudding. Yeah. But that's
So there'll be no differentiation between black pudding and
It
liver.
was like black pudding.
You don't get
I used
people
to
to
when we
do
got
the black pudding.
now my conscience won't.
Nobody's got blood in it.
Yeah.
But I
You're
think
blood.
that's a true indication. It's
Animal
it is
blood.
something you need to study for yourself and decide on for yourself. Does black pudding come under that thing? If it does, then
Is it blood or is it not?
well, there's lots of it. You've got what's the good stuff. But I mean, if you go abroad, sometimes you may be eating some stuff out there. You know, you haven't a clue what you're eating, but maybe at least you're conscious of moving perhaps. Okay, 1 Corinthians 10 deals with the question of eating meat, some portion of which might have been sacrificed to an idol. Instead of a pagan that drives you and a Christian to eat with them, you can eat anything that is set before you, asking no questions about the meat. He said a Christian knows that meat is just meat and an idol is nothing. Whoever thinks the idol represents a real god of some kind, and the idol's meat becomes special to that person. And so it has that special significance. So you have to be aware of these things. Stonehenge. Yes. Okay. If something in your house is
chapter 17.
tells you that the meat has been used in idol worship, then you should not eat it. Because obviously they are saying, they're making a point of that. Now, sometimes, this is a bit tricky, because sometimes you ought not to get, but you sometimes get a Christian who's a little bit tricky, okay? Who might, in the process of giving you something to eat, he'll say, of course you realise this is meat from an idol.
That'll be a test to you too.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do
So
about
what are you
it?
going to do about it? You know, are you going to eat it because it's not against your conscience? Is the very fact that I've put it before you a test and thinking, well, I've got a problem with this, but I'm prepared to eat it, or maybe not. Or what's the deal here? So you could end in a situation maybe a little bit sticky, and you've got to think about that. This is in deference to the person who told you, and that person's conscience, not because of your conscience. He's aware that it's from an idol, and that's why he said it. So he's, you know, he's
got a problem himself.
He's got a problem himself, and he might, you know. Anyway, we must not encourage anyone to sin against his conscience or lead someone to think we worship an idol. And most of the Western world, until recently, we have no real problem with paganism or idol worship. But because of the general lack of Bible knowledge these days, these are things that are coming back. More and more people and more TV programs, all sorts of stuff dedicated to covenants and all sorts of stuff coming back. In fact, outside Kettering General Hospital, the coven meets there over the woods in the back there.
With the Muslims. With the Muslims having a special kitchen in Kettering.
No, sir. Now, I said, come behind behind the hospital.
Yes.
There's a coven
Oh.
meets in the woods.
Oh, yeah.
Cult.
What
Yeah.
woods?
Well, those bushy places in behind the
That's
hospital.
right. Well, when I was in the hospital at night, there were people dancing out there in the dark.
Yeah, I was one of them.
No, that's true.
Inside the heliport.
That seemed to be a kind of almost like a witch's coven.
Yeah.
Oh. Never saw that.
They say there's some in the woods opposite me. I've never seen them yet.
Okay.
And you go looking
Possible
for them.
elders with the whole church decided to choose.
Too cold.
Some of their own men send them down there, Paul and Barnabas, they chose Judas. We'll stop there, shall we? Probably. Yeah. That's going on to the next situation. Okay. So